He who chooses to walk his own path must be ready to walk alone. Have you ever wondered what it really means to be alone? I don't mean that caricature of loneliness from sad movies with rain on the window and melancholic music in the background. I'm talking about the kind of solitude that slips into the corners of the soul, even when the room is quiet. The one that feels more like a radical choice than an involuntary punishment. Now tell me, what if the absence of someone in your life isn't a sign of failure, but an act of brutal lucidity? What if the price of freedom is precisely that emptiness? And what if being misunderstood is the clearest evidence that you're on the right path? Whoever can't stand their own company shouldn't impose that burden on others. Friedrich Nietzsche, take a deep breath. What you're about to hear isn't comfortable, nor should it be. We live in an era where connections are collected like trophies. Followers, likes, numbers, selfies. Scenes where no one looks anyone in the eye. The world is full of people surrounded and completely empty. Meanwhile, you with your long nights in silence, you who choose solitude like someone who refuses poison served in crystal glasses. They call you cold, distant, complicated, Sigma. But what if I told you that it is precisely that choice that makes you feel complete? Maybe, just maybe, you have no one because you refuse to be just another one. This video is a deep dive, not superficial like a motivational tip, but dense, like the bottom of a well only the brave dare descend. We'll explore together the invisible, psychological, and philosophical reasons why Sigma men have no one, and why that absence is actually one of the noblest signs of emotional integrity. Prepare yourself, not to change, but to understand, not to defend yourself, but to reveal yourself. This is a conversation between someone tired of hiding and someone tired of pretending to feel what they don't feel. Welcome to the Soul's Pre-Dawn. Here we'll talk about you without masks, without fear, without an audience. Just you and that inner echo that may finally find words. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from the absence of sound, but from refusal. Refusal to participate, to smile when there's no reason, to say all good when inside everything is collapsing. It's in that silence that the Sigma man lives, not as someone who was excluded, but as someone who chose to withdraw irrevocably. And the world, with its hysterical superficiality, does not forgive those who withdraw. Have you noticed? Most people are so desperate for connection, they'd rather drown in empty interactions than face the terror of being alone. They go to parties they hate, laugh at unfunny jokes, accept invitations from people they secretly despise, all in the name of an artificial belonging that numbs an uncomfortable truth. No one is actually meeting. Everyone is just avoiding themselves, together, but not you. You look and you see. You hear what wasn't said, and most importantly, you choose not to play along with the staging. One must still have chaos within to give birth to a dancing star. Nietzsche again, like a ghost who understands you. Have you noticed how they look at you differently? With puzzlement, as if there was something wrong with not needing anyone. They confuse your peace with arrogance, your silence with weakness, your selectiveness with coldness. But what they don't see, and may never see, is that you've already been through the hell of useless togetherness and came back. You returned with scars, with bitter memories of conversations that led nowhere, of cold hugs, of loyalties purchased with convenience. Remember? That barbecue where everyone laughed out loud, but your eyes didn't meet a single gaze with real light in it. Or that group chat where you tried to say something real and were cut off by a stupid joke. Those experiences marked you. They taught you that being surrounded by people is often the most disguised form of loneliness. So you made a decision. Today your phone doesn't ring. Your weekend is quiet. No one invites you out. Not because they've forgotten you, but because you no longer accept invitations to places where you can't be fully yourself. They call you a loner, but you know you are preserved. You understand the value of your energy, your presence, your time. And for a world that lives on excess, that's unacceptable. They want you to give yourself even when you don't feel like it, even with no reciprocity. They don't understand that you prefer emptiness to emotional dishonesty. Do you know why? Because you're not afraid of the mirror. You learn to endure your own presence, and that's a superpower few can handle. The world revolves around evasion, and you are the obstacle. You are the living reminder that a person can be complete without an audience, and that terrifies them. Because if you're fine alone, who needs the performance? Solitude in your case is not absence. It is pure presence. It's the sacred space where the world's noise doesn't enter. And in that space, you hear something everyone else silenced long ago, your own truth. So before you ask yourself, why don't I have anyone, and ask, do I really need anyone? Or could it be that deep down this absence is the last form of resistance against a world determined to make us all the same? You weren't left out. You stepped away. And that stepping away is your crown. Now there's something you need to know. Has it ever happened that just when you most need to stay calm, your mind collapses? That loss of control isn't only emotional, it's mental. It happens because most people were trained to feel before thinking, to react before observing. The problem is structural. No one taught us to train the mind like a muscle. So every small frustration turns into an explosion, and every challenge into an inner defeat. But there's another way to operate, a framework based on neuroscience, applied philosophy, and quiet mental techniques that reprogram how you respond and put you back in command. We recorded a video showing step-by-step how that works in practice. If you want to watch it now, scan the code on the screen or click the link in the description or in the pinned comment. Is there anything lonelier than being surrounded by people and still feeling that no one is actually there? You've lived it, sitting at a table listening to voices, laughter, stories, yet noticing that everything there is a performance, a play with no direction, a dance with no music. In those moments, the Sigma man absents himself, not physically but spiritually. He disconnects from the illusion. And that's where it all begins to make sense. Most people don't show up. They sell themselves. They carry rehearsed smiles, recycled opinions, stock phrases. They play roles written by others. The successful one, the cool one, the spiritual one, the outraged one. But the Sigma, he sees behind the makeup, and that gaze pierces. Have you noticed? You walk into a place and feel the atmosphere. You catch the subtext of the conversation, the little lies, the gestures that don't match the words. While others are distracted by what's said, you perceive what's hidden. That is your gift, but also your curse. Because once you see, you can't unsee. You're not fooled by practiced charisma. You aren't swayed by pretty speeches if the eyes don't match. You feel when a word comes from the soul and when it comes from a script. And most of the time it's from a script. To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. Ralph Waldo Emerson. The problem is that seeing too much also means losing too much. You lose your enchantment with people. You lose the desire to socialize. You even lose patience because everything starts to feel fake, boring, predictable. And in that loss, you begin to step back, not out of arrogance, but out of integrity. You're not antisocial, you're anti-artificial. That isolates you, but it also protects you. Remember that conversation where the person spoke passionately about authenticity with a filter on their face and a desperate fear of displeasing anyone? Remember that group where everyone opined about politics, art, or spirituality as if reading the same script? And you silent, not for lack of ideas, but from an excess of lucidity. They call it coldness, but it's just your boundary being respected. You don't know how to fake, and more than that, you no longer accept being the audience for someone else's pretense. The Sigma doesn't tolerate simulation. He sees the effort behind the image, the anxiety behind the confident speech, the lack disguised as independence, and it repulses him. But there's more, a truth that burns. You don't want someone who impresses, you want someone who reveals. While the world applauds those who can perform, you long for those who know how to exist. And that's rare. You prefer emptiness to feigned presence. You prefer silence to false praise. You prefer solitude to the company of someone performing a character. Most people live like shop windows, showing, hiding, seeking approval. You live like a dark cave, deep, echoing truths that scare those who've never dared to descend. That's why you feel alone even among many, because few have the courage to take off the mask, and fewer still the courage to look yours in the eyes. But that solitude isn't a tragedy. It's the pause between farces and the true meeting. Keep waiting, keep seeing, keep refusing the superficial world, because sooner or later someone, perhaps another Sigma, will see you too. And when that happens, it won't be loud. It'll be like a whisper that resonates inside the soul saying, I truly see you. Have you ever tried to explain why you simply cannot accept less than what is real? Tried to put into words that feeling that everything offered to you sounds like emotional crumbs, even when the plate looks full? It isn't arrogance, nor a wounded pride. It's something deeper, something that refuses to sell itself cheap. It's called a standard, and yours is not common. But the world wasn't made for those who demand the essential. The world was made for the adaptable, for those who accept good enough, those who tolerate lukewarm, who say, at least I'm not alone. You can't and never could. From very young, you observed human behavior with quiet discomfort. People settling for relationships full of emptiness, friendships of convenience, loves wrapped in anxiety and codependence. You wanted something alive, that needed no explanations, that didn't have to be forced. You wanted depth, reciprocity, right? But then came the realization, demanding what's real nowadays is almost a revolutionary act, because what abounds most are display case relationships, pretty on the outside, empty within. You began to notice the details, how little people actually listen to each other, how they confuse intensity with attachment, company with possession, affection with need. Little by little, your criteria were sharpened by disappointment. It wasn't a sudden choice. It was a process. You gave chances, believed in potential, ignored the signs, but at some point you got tired. You realized that every time you lowered your standards to fit with someone, a part of you died a little, and you decided to stop dying for others. Now, your standard isn't about beauty, status, or isolated intelligence. It's about consistency, integrity, someone who not only says, but is. And do you know what that produced? A desert. Because when you start demanding what's real, 98% of people disappear. Remove those who don't know how to respect your mind, and your house will be empty. But for the first time, it will be livable. Unknown author, but it sounds like it spoke straight from your soul. That's where the Sigma's pain lives. Being discerning in a superficial world is like trying to breathe deeply underwater. People don't understand. They say you're too selective, that you're waiting for someone who doesn't exist. What they don't know is you've already seen that person. Even if it was in a book or a dream, or for 2 minutes in a coffee shop line, you know they exist, and that's why you won't accept less. But that search has a price. Isolation. Yes, you see yourself spending another weekend in solitude. You see yourself declining invitations because you know what awaits you. Shallow conversations, empty gazes, people trying to turn you into someone more accessible. You know it. Every time you try to dilute yourself to be accepted, you lost yourself. So now you wait, not for someone perfect, but for someone complete. Someone who doesn't run from your depth. Someone who isn't afraid of your silence. Someone who won't try to fix you. That person is rare, but so are you. And that's why the meeting hasn't happened yet. Because when two whole people recognize each other, there's no rush, there is peace. Until then, solitude remains your sacred ground. It hurts sometimes, but it hurts less than pretending. And remember, you're not alone because your standards are high. You're alone because you haven't yet found someone who also refuses to shrink. And that, my friend, is a rare kind of courage. Have you ever felt you were in a place where everyone smiles but no one is truly happy? Where conversations swirl like a choreographed dance, repeating the same steps, the same fake compliments, the same fears dressed up as opinions. You're not crazy, you're lucid, and that's precisely why you feel so out of place. For the Sigma man, togetherness has never been about physical presence. It's psychic, energetic. It's being with someone and feeling you can exist in full. But the world doesn't work like that. It works like a game board with unspoken rules, predefined roles, and subtle punishments for whoever dares go off script. You must smile even if you don't feel like it. You must agree even if you don't believe it. You must adapt even if it shreds your essence. But you started questioning everything, and in doing so, you destroyed the game. In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act, often attributed to George Orwell. You realize most social interactions are nothing more than a refined form of mutual manipulation. People say what they think you want to hear and expect you to do the same. It's a dance of courtesies and conveniences, a poorly rehearsed play. So you stop dancing. Remember that dinner where everyone cheerfully chatted about banalities? You tried to introduce a deeper thought, an existential question. The mood cooled. Someone changed the subject. Others laughed awkwardly. And you understood. They're not there to think. They're there to keep the illusion alive. The illusion that they love each other, that they understand each other, that they belong. But you don't belong. And finally, that stopped being a problem. It became a sign. Because the Sigma doesn't want to be part of a group just out of fear of being alone. He prefers exile to alienation. And that's why you make people uncomfortable. Your mere presence in a social setting is already a threat. You don't play the game, and that makes the players nervous. Because if you survive and thrive without joining the play, then maybe the stage was never necessary. They call you distant, arrogant, weird. But deep down they envy you because you remind them of what they've lost. Authenticity. You're not there to compete. You don't want to be the funniest, the most popular, the most beloved. You just want to be, and that alone is too much for them. When you say what you truly think, the room tightens. When you don't laugh at the unfunny joke, you become the odd one. When you don't enter the attention contest, you become invisible. But here's the truth. You don't want to be seen by those who can only look at the surface. You don't want to play a game whose prize is the approval of empty people. Little by little, you withdrew. You stopped forcing get-togethers. You stopped explaining your reasons. You stopped trying to fit in. And by doing so, you recovered something almost no one has, your integrity. You can walk alone, but you walk whole, while many are surrounded yet fragmented. You're not playing the social game. You're building a separate world. A world where conversation is real, silence is respected, and presence is enough. And yes, that world is quieter, lonelier, rawer, but also truer. And at the end of the road, the Sigma man knows it's better to be authentic in the desert than be just another masked face at the masquerade. There's a kind of presence that quiets the room, not out of arrogance or a craving for the spotlight, but through the invisible density of someone who carries an entire universe within. It's the kind of presence that doesn't need to raise its voice. It simply exists, and its very existence is a threat. That's you. And perhaps no one ever told you clearly, but your depth makes people uncomfortable. Not because you impose it, but because it exposes their emptiness. Most people live on the surface of their own existence. They react, they repeat, they survive. They spend their lives avoiding their own minds, as if it were a dark room where something terrifying lives. But you entered that room, turned on the light, looked the monster in the eyes, and chose to stay. That changed you. You began to observe the world in a way few can bear. While everyone comments on what happened, you want to know why it happened. While they talk about people, you reflect on patterns. While the topic is the present, you're thinking of the before and after, of the invisible and the inevitable. You're the one who silences chatter with a single question. The one who, amid laughter and distractions, casts a look that says, "There's something here no one wants to see." And that's why they avoid you. Because being by your side is a summons to presence. It's facing one's own lack of depth. It's realizing that what they considered thinking was just mental noise. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakens? Carl Gustav Jung. You woke up, and now you're surrounded by sleepwalkers pretending to be awake. That depth, that lucidity demands courage. Courage not to belong. Courage to question everything. Courage to be alone. You don't want lukewarm relationships, superficial conversations, ritual coexistence. You want emotional intensity with psychic stability. You want someone who can read you without reducing you. Someone who won't be scared by the chaos inside you because they visited their own. The harsh truth is, almost no one has gotten there. Almost no one has endured their own silence. And so almost no one can endure you. You are a mirror reflecting what others have spent their lives trying to hide. And what stays hidden too long becomes intolerable in the light. That's why when people approach you, many retreat, not because you did anything wrong, but because you invite them, wordlessly, to go one level deeper within themselves. And that's frightening. They want the surface. They want to know your sign, your favorite color, your favorite dish. You want to know what destroyed them and rebuilt them. You want to know which thought makes them cry at dawn. You want to know what they avoid, what moves them, what they deny in themselves. You want essence, but most live on appearances. So you isolate yourself, not out of arrogance, but out of emotional hygiene. Your mind, deep and quiet, won't tolerate the noise of empty distractions. You chose to build an inner temple while the world chases loud parties. And yes, there are moments when solitude tightens, but it isn't a punishment, it's a consequence. You own yourself, and that, in today's world, is revolutionary. While many shapeshift to be accepted, you refuse to deform yourself. While most live to fill silences, you live to inhabit truth. And that truth, my friend, exacts a price. But it also gives a gift: freedom. You no longer need anyone to feel complete. And paradoxically, it's that state of fullness that will someday attract the right kind of company. The kind that doesn't arrive to fill you, but to overflow with you. Have you ever seen someone enter a place and, without saying a single word, change the energy of the environment? Not out of arrogance, not due to imposed authority, but through a presence that doesn't need to announce itself. That is the power of someone who has stopped explaining themselves, who has reached the psychological integrity Carl Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are without apologizing for it. And that integrity cannot be faked because it isn't in the speech. It's in the gesture, in the gaze, in the silence that says, "I listen to myself first, and that is enough." Getting there, however, isn't a miracle. It's excavation work, a long, brave, often solitary path. It requires confronting everything that taught you to live for others. Above all, it requires restoring self-trust. Because what sustains the compulsion to explain isn't just fear of rejection. It's fear of being wrong about yourself, not being certain your feelings are valid, not fully believing your truth deserves space, even if nobody likes it. That's why psychological integrity is quiet but dense. It doesn't shout or impose, it's like a deep root. No one sees it, but it holds everything up. You start noticing that integrity in small gestures. When you say no without remorse, when you feel something uncomfortable and don't try to rationalize it, when you leave a place without needing to justify yourself, when you trust your intuition, even without proof, you no longer need to be understood because you already understand yourself. And that change resonates. Relationships change. The kinds of conversations you tolerate change. The way people treat you changes because you stopped being malleable and became someone who inhabits themselves. Jung said the psyche is like a living system. When there's imbalance, it produces symptoms. When there's alignment, it produces presence. The presence of someone who doesn't beg for attention, who doesn't need applause, who doesn't live by others' interpretations, and that begins to emanate from you. People feel it and start treating you differently, not because you became superior, but because you became complete. There's something magnetic about someone who refuses to explain themselves, not as a defense, but as an existential stance. Like someone saying, I no longer adapt to what's expected. I belong to what I am. That integrity is revolutionary because it deactivates control games, dismantles relationships based on guilt, and initiates a new kind of bond. One formed between two integrities, not between lack and approval. But note, integrity isn't rigidity. It's flexibility with roots. It's the ability to listen to another without dissolving. To say, that doesn't resonate with me, without building an elaborate argument. To act kindly, without betraying yourself. You don't need to explain your boundaries, you hold them. You don't need to defend your feelings, you live in them. You don't need to convince anyone. You no longer negotiate your essence. And the stronger that stance grows, the less anxiety you feel, the less need to control others' perceptions, the less fear of being misunderstood. Because you understood, respect isn't born of effort. Respect is born of presence, and presence is born of truth. Yours, the one that needs no subtitles, that doesn't fit into a justification, that simply is. Perhaps the hardest part isn't stopping the explanations, but accepting that you never needed them. You didn't come into the world to be understood. You came to be whole. When the need to convince goes quiet, something awakens within you. It isn't pride, it's sovereignty. It's the quiet return to the place where your strength has always been, in you. And I know this because I lived the opposite. For a long time I bent to fit in, edited myself to please, explained everything, until one of those days when the soul gets tired, I said nothing. And for the first time, I was truly heard. Sometimes silence is the only sound the world respects. If this video touched something in you, it's because perhaps, like me, you're tired of asking permission to be. So breathe, stay in the quiet, and belong to yourself. Oh, and don't forget to click the link in the description or in the pinned comment to watch the full content about the mental model that has helped thousands of people stop reacting like before and start responding with strength, clarity, and control. So if you too have been crossing this desert, I tell you, keep going. Don't turn back. Because the emptiness you feel now is the exact space where something authentic can someday be born. And when it is, you'll be whole enough to receive it. Thank you for walking with me this far. This video wasn't made for everyone. It was made for the few, the rare, the ones who dare to think while everyone else is shouting, the ones who refuse the crowd to be able to save themselves. If you got this far and felt this video spoke for you, comment below. I choose truth, even if it costs me company. I want to know who's with me on this path. If this touched something deep inside you, leave a like, not for the algorithm, but because it shows me it's worth continuing to speak these forgotten truths. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you already know. Feel free to ignore it. But be clear, more videos like this are coming, and some may say things you haven't yet dared to think. Those videos appearing on screen now, Choose carefully. One of them might take you even deeper into that inner world you always suspected existed. The other may keep you from sleeping tonight, but it will make you wake up different tomorrow. Until the next pre-dawn, keep guarding your solitude. It isn't a prison, it's a throne.